Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday, we have Freedom Finger, the bat crazy space shooter. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Wideright Interactive, Freedom Finger released at the end of September in 2019. It's available for the Nintendo Switch and PC. So, right off the bat, I can tell you that this is one of the more unique shoot-em-ups I feel I've experienced. It has a unique blend of crude humor, satirical story, and an awesome rock soundtrack that just makes it different from most of the other games in the genre. So it's a horizontal scrolling shoot 'em up, which is relatively straightforward, but all those different elements kind of combine it to make it something that I can recommend on just how different of a title it is. Although if you're not necessarily into crude humor, then that could be a potential turnoff. So, what do we have here? So, if you're starting the game for the first time, you'll be playing through the campaign. As you complete stages in the campaign, you'll be able to play those stages individually in arcade mode. And that's how we're going to have a look at the game. As there's enough variety here, I want to show a little bit more of the game than just a couple of the vanilla stages, as I don't feel that would give the greatest impression of the title as it really is. So here we are in the arcade mode level select. There are a ton of levels in this game. It's 36 levels spread across 12 different worlds, and some of them are accessed in really... well, the way that some of the stages are accessed is really neat. So as you play through the story, you'll encounter the story choices. You choose one option, you'll go one direction in the path. You choose the other, you'll go the other direction. I really like that kind of variable gameplay that adds to the replayability of the title overall. So as we load the game, you've got these quotes from political figures in the bottom left. Some of them are really thought-provoking, others just make those individuals sound kind of stupid, and it's, an interesting touch that really fits the theme of the game. So right off the bat, we have our ship, the Eagle Claw, which is basically just a hand giving the whole universe the finger. And that's what we have as far as an attack. So for the game tutorial gives us a couple descriptions for the attacks we have. Our main weapon, the laser here, is referred to as the finger, and we're just going around giving the universe the finger. We also have the fist, which is the ability to go up and punch enemies. And then we can also grab enemies. And depending on the kind of enemies we grab, we might be able to use their weapons as well. Although you can also throw the enemies, and you can also grab both objects and enemies to throw as well. So if you can't necessarily fire an enemy, you can always throw those enemies and deal some pretty decent damage that way. But it's really fun to grab the enemies and use their weapons against all the others, as there are some neat effects that you can get. So like this particular larger plane happens to have this helix pattern shot. And as far as what we have mechanic wise, that's basically it. So you've got the ability to shoot, the ability to punch, the ability to grab and throw. And really, that helps make for some different gameplay that you don't normally see in a lot of shoot 'em ups. There are some where you're able to grab and use the abilities of other enemies, but it's not something that we see too frequently. So there are a couple different power-ups that we can pick up as well. So that one I got is the shield, and it creates this ring of 5 energy balls. I'm not actually 100% sure what they are, that surround your ship and allow you to take hits for each hit you take, you'll lose one of those balls, and eventually they'll all go away. So this is a good point to note. One of the things that this game does and does really well is it has action that matches its soundtrack. So there's a different track that plays in almost every stage. So there's music from over 18 different bands and artists in this game. So you've got a huge array of music, and a lot of the action in the gameplay is choreographed to that music. So that in of itself is really, really neat. And then just that variety. Ooh, we want to grab this. The shotgun is both a bizarre ship to see flying around, although no more bizarre than a flying hand giving the universe the finger, but it also makes a great weapon. This is actually one of my favorite to use, as it's both has a really good spread to its shot and also deals quite a bit of damage. So the stages themselves do have a good amount of length to them, as the vast majority of normal stages will last till the song comes to an end. So that's something to keep in mind, as that if there one of the minor criticisms I would have is like sometimes some of the stages just seem a little bit too long, and I think that might be part of it, is that just because they're trying to match the music so in step. But other stages feel short. Oh, quick cameo up there in the top right. Hopefully you're like fans of science fiction, or more specifically Mystery Science Theater 3000, the Satellite of Love, making an appearance in the stage. So when you complete the stage, you'll get these mission stats, and you'll get asses kicked, so the number of enemies you've destroyed, damage taken. If you have taken no damage, you'll get bonuses, and then there's also bonuses for how many enemies you grabbed, how many enemies you threw, punched enemies, and then each stage has kind of this joke total at the bottom, in this case, gaps jumped, and that's a really fun little total to have there. Then you also have online leaderboards, so you can compare your progress against others. And even though we started from the arcade mode, oh no, never mind. Here we are back at the arcade mode. So the next stage I'll go and show is one of the bosses. So we'll jump to the level 2 boss. And here in the level stage, it's giving you the level, but what you see there isn't the title of the stage itself, but it's actually the band and the song that's playing in the stage. So if you want to look up the music, or you're interested in the band and some of the music I really, really like, then you can easily look up both the song and the band from the, well, in the arcade mode in particular, but just from the stage titles as you start the stage. So this is not a complaint that I've put out, or this is a complaint rather that I have said plenty of times in the past. And one thing I do wish this game had was some sort of health bar, or more straightforward indicator as far as boss damage is concerned. As we damage the boss, there will be some indication of damage done to the boss, but I don't really feel it does a great job of saying like, hey, the boss is this close to death. Rather, it's just a nice visual indicator that we are doing something to the boss. So this boss goes through several different phases where he'll have cannons, or this zeppelin, or later on in the fight a scythe come out. So these enemies here we can grab and throw. Unfortunately, they don't actually do anything for us shot-wise. So that's one of the reasons it'd be nice to see a health bar, so you could know if the boss is taking more or less damage from the attacks you're doing. So we'll grab this enemy here and have a three-way shot. It's not as powerful as the shotgun, but it's still, hopefully it gets more done. I would assume if we were in close range getting the enemy with all three shots, that it would do significantly more damage. So while we're in this fight, let's actually take a second to look at the options. So you can pull up the options from both the main menu and the pause menu, which happens to be a beautiful mock-up of a sriracha bottle. So that's one of the fun things about the story. It's this really satirical, politically incorrect story that deals with subjects like sriracha, U.S. foreign policy, communism. But just the way that the start menu and the option or the pause menu and this option menu looks just like grabs so much of an awesome theme to it. I just really love it. So here we can even alter the difficulty at this, or I'm not actually sure if it will have us restart, but let's have a look at the difficulty here. So there are several different presets you can play. I currently have it set to the story preset, so it's set easier. There's also the ability to set diaper. This is for those that are really inexperienced with shoot 'em ups. There's also Normie, this is the recommended way to play the game, and Cargo Shorts. Whoa, we've got a badass on our hands. Max difficulty, no punches pulled. So we'll leave it on story. But one of the fun options that exists in the option screen is the censor. So we have the ability to censor the middle finger, also the dialogue and the subtitles, but only for English text. There also is Russian and Chinese as language options, interestingly enough. So if we censor the middle finger, when we pop back out, then we have a censored middle finger. Now, ironically enough, I feel that this actually makes the Eagle Claw look potentially more offensive just because it is being censored. So there's that element where one of those things, you throw a censor bar over things and suddenly it's more offensive than it was without the censor bar. Of course, when we grab a ship and we're not sticking the middle finger out, then the censor bar disappears as it's unnecessary. And boom, there goes our boss. Stage clear. That was an alright score. So we'll end it with this stage 3-3 as it kind of shows a little bit of a different graphical look. So as far as the way the game looks, most of the game is presented in this hand-drawn art style, but let's get rid of that censor bar real quick. There is one stage in particular that does feature some pixel art, and that one's a lot of fun. Part of the reason I picked this stage is the first time I went through the game, I didn't end up coming to the stage as I didn't go and play that particular story path. Oh, sometimes enemies will stick to you, and to get rid of them you have to punch. But this stage has some of the, in my mind, funner shooting effects that we can get from picking up enemies. So there we have it. Freedom Finger served up for your enjoyment. So as far as my minus flavors are concerned, so the first one that I have is just that like minor beef with having no life bar for the bosses. I would just like an easier way to see and have some idea of how far through a fight I actually am. But aside from that, there's also just a minor complaint of not having enough variety to the enemies you could pick up and what those enemies could do. But part of the way I feel, a reason I felt that way, is when I played through the game for the first time, I didn't come through World 3, and that world kind of changed a lot of that, as this one just is kind of surreal in a way that most of the rest of the game isn't, but actually a lot of the game kind of is surreal. But plus flavors are concerned, well, the game itself has a really long length, and so your value and just the replayability is really there. You have the branching paths, you have the ability to go back and easily replay the stages, so it's definitely one that I can give major props to. And then there's the unique gameplay of having the ability to grab just about any enemy or anything and throw it back at the other enemies. So in this case, those fans that we were seeing, we picked up the fan. This one's actually kind of interesting, as the enemy shots hit it, it takes damage and it'll go away. Well, depending on the difficulty setting, that's just going to be a given. Oh, so this finger is our life power-up. We also have the ability to shoot cigarettes from the stage. We can go and shoot these discs. There's just a lot of fun, unique things that the gameplay mechanic can do, and I do appreciate that. And then my last big plus flavor, I really liked the game's soundtrack. It was really awesome and jamming at times, and how the action is choreographed to it from time to time just really adds a fun twist to the game itself. But then, as far as just like another minus flavor that I forgot to mention, the humor. So playing it in arcade mode, you're not really seeing much of the story, but the story is this satirical tale of a rogue military official and this battle against the commies, both like the Chinese and the Russians. So it's definitely big on being satire of the American foreign policy bravado, and then satirical takes on communism as well. And a lot of it is done in crude humor as well, and it's just that isn't really much my taste, but the game is still enjoyable despite all that. So there you have it. Freedom Finger served up for your enjoyment. Definitely a title that I can recommend just based off of how unique it feels to me. Alright, this will just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.